circumstances. And on that happy note.
Well, so I find that, I'm glad you really brought up the kind of comparison between the real life and, what was happening before the internet was here and the internet times. Because, on the surface, if you think about it, before the internet really happened, we still had privacy issues. Imagine you were living in a small village, right? And there's this kind of peculiar habit that you have that you didn't want kind of people to know. But in the pub over beers, you mentioned to your neighbor, and very soon the whole village knows. Right? It's a privacy issue. Occasionally there was some kind of drifter going through the village, and they might break into somebody's house and steal things. Or there might be a kind of opportunistic real estate dealer, who'd kind of look through the obituary columns, identify widows, through recently deceased people, and try to buy their houses for cheap, right? All these things are happening in the internet today. They're not really that much different, but there is some fundamental differences. Right? One of them is that internet is pretty complex. It's fairly difficult for people to understand. People have been dealing with kind of drifters and village peoples and things like that for hundreds of years. Internet has been here for about 20. Makes it difficult for people to kind of adjust to the change. The other thing is, internet is global. It makes the problem the whole world, right? Some of the people you know on the internet, you don't really know them. You just know their picture in their Facebook page. And some of the occasional posts that they do. You don't really know they are actually who they pretend to be. Their name may not be right. And you don't know who they are affiliated with and what they really think. That makes it different. But that doesn't necessarily give us a solution to the problem. And the solution is very difficult, right? Nobody has the answer today. Because, on one hand, the technology is giving us a lot of good value. It allows people to communicate across the world. I would argue that some of the internet technology is responsible for the Berlin Wall falling and, China opening up a bit. And that's probably why the Chinese government is blocking a lot of the communication technology. It allows people to see what's happening in the other parts of the world. I recently, being a security guy, I recently let Google access to my location data all the time. Because I found that I actually get value out of it. And I don't really care, Google, or anybody else knowing where I am. I don't want my boss to know where I am. Right? But that's a different story, especially on application. Well, that would be illegal, actually. But having said that, we need to strike the right balance between the value that technology offers and the privacy protection. And I think, education and public debate is the best mechanism at this point, because we need to learn from each other. We need to learn from the millennial generation in terms of why it's not that important to them to protect their privacy. It's more important for them to actually share the information with their peers. So that's why I think, this panel is very important in terms of starting to address these issues and understanding.
So I have a question. A question from the audience, and I think it's a good time. It's from Mooney. And it's addressed to Stephanie, but it's also addressed to the rest of the panel to comment on it. I think it's an important one. It relates to how effective legislation is and how well you can enforce it, if you can. You were mentioning the dentist and his complaint to the privacy commissioner. Since he's no longer a customer of the original vendor, the privacy law states that once the purpose of the collection of the personal information is no longer required, it must be destroyed. So why cannot the privacy commissioner act upon this and order the destruction of this information?
Well, and the reason I can talk about this complaint is Dick has been discussing it on the National Privacy Coalition listserv, which I encourage you to join if you're interested in privacy. So he's been discussing it with various other privacy advocates. What do I do now? And it is true that the purpose, as stated, was to give him service. If they have not stated, if they put any kind of a purpose clause in there that said, and to bring you other offers or something like that, the usual weasel words, then that purpose may be considered to be still maintained, so that providing other offers is still there. Now, he has the right to reject that and to ask for his data back. I think he's got a very good complaint. I will be extremely, as one of the authors of Pivot, discouraged if it winds up being thrown out. And one of the other complicating factors in here is, of course, there's the bank in question, there's the new bank that's getting the data, and then there is the loyalty program. And so there's actually 3 different corporations that are bandying about his data. We have this problem in bankruptcy too, where sometimes the only asset left in the company is the information, and that's when you find out how much your information's worth, whether it's €2 or 17 cents. So I want to not be pessimistic, because I'm optimistic. As I said, we're only on the bottom rung here. As soon as more people start complaining, as soon as more people start understanding, most corporations do not like bad publicity. Thanks to social media, you can start a campaign against a corporation remarkably quickly and very effectively nowadays. So I think that, there may be some pushback. The other thing is, you don't get anything for free. We've been getting all these free services, and I have to say, I signed on to Dropbox a while ago because I had to send a picture, and my mail service wouldn't let me send the picture to the degree of resolution that I needed for this publication I was going in. So I finally parked it in Dropbox, being nervous, as a privacy person always is. And they immediately went back the next day and said, congratulations on putting your photos in Dropbox. Download the other 960. So I'm going, okay, who gave them permission to cruise through because being a paranoid privacy person, I parked it on my desktop. I did not put it in my photo library, right? So they helped themselves to my photo library, saw that there were 960 pictures there, and who knows what they did. Maybe I signed on to some clause where they've already got them, for all I know. These are the kinds of things. I am now looking for a paid service that will respect my privacy and not go rifling through my photos. But unfortunately, the internet has grown up free, and we're all paying for it with our data.
You were just talking about destroying the information, and maybe you can raise your hand. How many of your organization have a record retention policy, basically, and they know exactly what they need to keep and when do they need to delete the information? And that starts there. And although there's some regulations, it's not being applied. So information is all over the place in a sense, and we don't pay enough attention. And I think education will be a good start, because we need to control our destiny, and we need through complaints and all that. And we, just look at the internet, the way it's being used. It is a really powerful tool too. So if we start complaining about a company that doesn't, act properly with our privacy information, that can create a lot of damages to that company too. So we have, I would say, a lot of power. And the other thing is also that if we wait until the government is probably having the right law, the right time, and all that, it's moving too fast, basically. Because if you look at internet, I was giving a speech last week, and I'm not that old, but I had a deck of cards, basic punch cards. It was easy to secure before. It was the same information. It was a deck of cards. You look at it, and you were making sure that who's touching it. Right now, it's open to the world. So the control hasn't evolved. The laws have been evolved to that new context, and that's why it's a complex environment, because doing things, with different companies throughout the world. So it's very, very complex.
Excellent question. I'm going to move on. We can return to this later. The next question, and we've touched upon it briefly, but perhaps we should explore it a bit more, is we've talked about how people aren't really aware of how they can manage their access to their private information. What do you believe is the best mechanism to get the message out, to educate people as to what measures they can take, what information they should and not offer, and so forth? Anybody want to start?
So I think there's several different things that can be done. I think first of all, the press has a very important role to play in terms of highlighting some of the specific incidents. Because people, when you approach them and tell them, that your information is at risk, look at you like you're crazy and turn away usually. They don't have time for this kind of conversation. They think they know what they're doing. They don't always do, unfortunately. The other problem is, which is kind of related to education, but I think it's critical. Right now, if you want to understand what happens to your data when you give it to a service provider, or you use a piece of software, or you do something online, you have to read a lot of small print. Most people don't. They don't have time to do it. I want to put my picture on Dropbox. I don't want to read through 3 pages of legalese. 3 pages, maybe
15.
more. 15, there you go. 15 pages of legalese. Most people wouldn't be able to comprehend it. They'd have to do it in 5 sittings, over 5 days. And I just want to post a picture. Right? And probably after I read it, I wouldn't be sure what it says anyway. When you want to install an application on your Android phone, you get a list of things that the application is going to do to you. Probably 90% of applications I've seen, by reading that list, I would never install that application if I cared about it. Because it tells me it's going to access my account information, my passwords, my emails, and that's 90% of them. How useful is that to me? It doesn't allow me to make an informed decision about what I use or what I don't use. It just gives me some warning, which probably the company can take later and say, well, we told you. Yeah, you did. So that means that I shouldn't really be using anything that you offer, right? We need to move beyond that, and we need to find a way that we can communicate privacy implication to people in plain English and fairly concisely, right? I don't want to read through 15 pages when I want to post a photo. I want to know whether, this photo is going to get to the person it's intended for. And if there's something else, just give me a couple of bullet points. Or ideally, don't keep that photo at all. I want a service where the service provider offers me the transmission and the communication without actually holding the information. Unfortunately, the business case that most of the online companies today follow unfortunately do not offer this type of service.
I know it's, what kind of device is that? What brand?
It's an Apple iPad.
Apple, okay, so that would be 56 pages of acceptable use. I looked it up.
I never read it.
I do believe, Marcel, that education is very important. But to answer your question, I've been through the type of information that was provided by the Ministry of Education in Quebec. There's an awful lot of information, but my conclusion is that there's a gap between technology and the type or the level of information that's provided by all those guys. They don't understand technology, or they don't understand the use of the internet by the youngsters. So I think that we will have to shift forward and try something else. One of the things that I like to mention is that there's do you know about what? Web of Trust. It's kind of an anonymous network of thousands of persons who are rating websites, including those ones who are asking you to read 50 pages before using a free service. And they are rating those sites if you can trust them and at which level. So when you enter that site, you will have a red circle, or a yellow circle, or a green circle. This is kind of an initiative that I really applaud. It's very interesting, and it's free.
56 million users.
Yeah.
There's also DuckDuckGo. I don't know if you
Yeah,
guys-
I had it here.
Just quickly, how many people here know about DuckDuckGo? DuckDuckGo. I know it's a silly name on purpose. It's a way you can browse using Google without giving Google all your information.
DuckDuckGo.com.
We don't know that.
We think to do.
I will get to the questions in a minute.
With respect to the readability of these notices, and I'm not a lawyer, and the lawyers who read this says it really shows, but anyway, these are contracts of adhesion, and there is a disproportionate power relationship between the folks that are issuing the contract and the poor folks who are trying to dig their way through the 56 pages. There's a lovely lady that started the Privacy Rights Clearinghouse, retired librarian, Beth Gibbons, down in San Diego. They did a study when the financial privacy law, the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, passed in the United States. You had to have, like in plain language, they did a study, you had to be have a master's degree to understand these notices. So that started a move towards short notices. Tiny, short one-pagers that don't actually tell you clearly where you can expect your data to go. In my view, somebody has to act for the citizen here. We've thrown them onto an untrusted platform. We don't regulate any of the software. We don't regulate any of these contracts. We let people do whatever they want. And so it's time to get in there and have somebody that advocates for the citizen to understand when there is a disproportionate power relationship and say, no, you can't do this. Over to IBM now.
On my personal behalf, but it's funny also to look how we're going from a trusted environment to an untrusted environment. Before, we're seeing, our neighbors and all that, and we establish a trust. Today, with the net, we don't know, who's the other person on the other side. We don't know what's the other company. We don't know how they do business. We don't know currently this one of the, when I heard the things on the news that it was probably 11 developers that was maintaining that piece of software, and one, didn't see it, and the other one with the test he was doing didn't see it either. I was, a bit flabbergasted to understand how a piece of software like that gets used without really understanding how it's being maintained and being developed. And, even now, imagine in the cloud. Now in the cloud, you don't know where the information resides, even as a corporation. So it's somewhere, but there's something happening, somewhere. What's your rights over that? It's getting very complicated, so,
Yes, make the comment, because I've actually worked in information services at one point, that in general, companies are, and other organizations, including governments and not-for-profits, are struggling with this whole issue of what is security and what is privacy. It's actually a very expensive enterprise to undertake. And that makes it difficult for them. Also, one other comment, and I'm going to go for some questions just to clear a bit. This sounds like a really good opportunity for a TISP with a site. Where's Alfredo? He's gone. As a site project, a local education in personal security, particularly for children. There he is.
That's something that should be taught in the schools.
And TISP is a program to teach.
Teacher, it's serious. Teacher.
So, take it away, guys. Some people had some questions.
I had a comment actually. Hi, I just wanted to say, make a comment about something I heard on CBC radio on April Fool's Day a couple of years ago. And some British company added a clause that said, I sell my soul to their contract. And a lot of people sold their soul on that day. So thanks for bringing up a very good point, because I'm supposedly very educated, but even I don't read through all that. So if they made something with blinking lights or flashing lights or, you know, something more conspicuous, I would really welcome that.
Okay.
But you'd still sell your soul.
What for?
Yes, exactly.
You have an extra copy of the soul?
Okay, I really enjoyed the discussion, and the topic is a very nice topic. And this comment just pointing to Neil, I guess, he's been hammering to talking about the government, you know, suggesting, if I understood you correctly, you know, the public have to protect themselves, you know, or to do the best in getting that. How about the government themselves? Do they know how to protect themselves? What is the latest incident with Revenue Canada last ever, when the computer, you know, you know, the income tax return is being delayed, you know, for all what is happening with the computer.
And we haven't even talked about Snowden yet, which I think we had promised ourselves we would do.
Yeah, I think, well, would do it. I think it would be a long discussion.
A couple of comments and a question. It's funny, Priya said about soul. I thought that was part of the requirements of the government. If you're a politician, you're not supposed to have one. But in any case, we can talk about that for hours. Internet security and the regulatory process. I started my career after undergrad with IBM back in Toronto, so I'll have to talk to you a few minutes after. I don't think there's a thing called privacy. Once the information gets out of you, you're finished. You know, you can have